I slipped into what is now known as mini retirements accidentally. It seemed like the most natural way for me, while continuing without making time to stop seemed like madness. And over the decades, my peers have stopped telling me I'm wasting time and started asking me instead how I make it happen, how that choice is possible. How am I not worried about being behind where I would be if I hadn't taken time out?
On Stories of Self, we go on journeys into the lives of ourselves and others. We see how stories connect, how they diverge, and how we can create our worlds and solve our problems. This is the real-life remix of storytelling, which is so often stranger than fiction. So come and sit round the fire, chill by the ocean, or get a coffee with me, as I delve into the stories of self that make, break, and remake us. Some stories are dramatic, some are serene, some will magically mirror you, and some will be delightfully different. I'm your host, Katie Reeve-Arnold, and this is Stories of Self.
Stop the world! I want to get off. I want some time for myself. I'm spinning too many plates. I'm juggling too many balls. I just want a break. When do I get to do what I want to do? I've often had times in life where I feel I can't do it all at once, where no matter how much I delegate, it feels like either I have too many things that can't be delegated, or that I don't want to delegate. After all, there are things I want to do in my life, so why would I delegate those to others if I want to do them myself? So what then? What can I do when not everything seems to want to flow at once? We've been told over and over and over, you can have it all. But have we ever stopped to ask, do I want it all? Sometimes having too much can feel more like a chore than a win in life. So maybe what we actually want is to have what we want when we want it. Okay, but then we need something from outside of ourselves always to make us happy. And even then, we need to be able to create time and presence to be fully in what we want. So what if we flip it around and notice that we can immediately choose to want what we have when we have it? This is a different perspective on the same thing that reframes all our future-focused fantasizing and brings us into resolution right here and right now, over and over. Because happiness doesn't exist out there in some esoteric, idealized future. And if it did, then when it gets here, it will be the present, and a new idealized future will have replaced it, which we will, by then, be living in hope of. Have you ever met someone who constantly shifts the goalposts? To keep you striving, no matter what you do, you can never seem to make it to that shifting target. Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's in a toxic relationship. Maybe it's at the gym. Maybe it's not someone outside of you. Maybe you're doing it to yourself. So what if it's not about what's coming, but what's here and now? Keep an eye on the future for sure, and keep heading in the direction of what you want. But keep both feet firmly in who you are being today and in loving that, not just tolerating it in hope of a better tomorrow. So I want to be a writer. If I don't throw myself fully into today and love it for all that it is and build on it moment by moment, then I won't be a writer today, and then I won't be a writer tomorrow or in future either. So I want to be a writer. Well, I am a writer, and today I'm writing. In some ways, it's just too simple. What is the difference between being a writer and not being a writer? Well, writing. What is the difference between eating healthy and becoming fit and not eating healthy and not becoming fit? Well, it's eating healthy and becoming fit. But sometimes it is the simplest things that are the hardest to accept. We think there must be some magic, complicated trick to it, something concealed from us. And social media isn't helping with the confusion. It's complicating it more. Video after video screams, 3 steps that make me $30,000 a month. Just pay $65 for immediate access to videos revealing the secret. Revealing what? revealing how I make reels, telling people I make $30,000 a month and charge them $65 for access to the info and send them a pre-recorded video with some tips on how to make videos and reach people via social media and charge them $65 to tell them how you make $30,000 a month. Stop the echo chamber. I want to get off. It feels like everyone is telling me something secret that can change my world, when the real truth at the end of the day is that the only thing that will ever change my world is me changing the actions I take, not at some future point, but right here and now and over in the heres and nows that follow. So where do I start changing the actions I take? I notice what has been taken for granted, and I take it for granted no longer. It might be something I take for granted. So a pattern buried in me that I've told myself is true. Like, for example, I have to do a job that I think others will respect and value me for, otherwise there won't be value in who I am. I used to tell myself that, but I was wrong. We each have intrinsic value just for being who we are. Or it might be something the whole world takes for granted, a shared myth we all live by. Like, I have to work straight through from my teens until I reach retirement age at approximately 65 to 70 years old. I have to work almost all the weeks of every year of my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s until I get to retire and don't have to work anymore. Well, most of the world has bought into it and is doing it. But is it true? And is it right for me? As I see more and more people in the retirement years who worked as they were told to from 20 to 65, finding it hard to make ends meet and needing extra support from governments, family, friends, charities to be able to make ends meet on a meagre retirement. As I see more and more people going back to work post-retirement to earn some money to bolster their pension, which they realise now is not giving them the life they want. As I see people retiring and looking around for what to do next, missing a connected community in their day-to-day life, and looking for a new purpose via participating in something bigger than themselves, in volunteering or in other forms of work. As I see people telling me they don't want to retire, that they are happy in what they do, or they would just like to work less each week. As I see people retiring telling me they don't want to do the same things they had planned for retirement when they were 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. Because they changed and now they don't want to do those things anymore. I slipped into what is now known as mini retirements accidentally. It seemed like the most natural way for me, while continuing without making time to stop seemed like madness. And over the decades, my peers have stopped telling me I'm wasting time and started asking me instead how I make it happen, how that choice is possible. How am I not worried about being behind where I would be if I hadn't taken time out? I took my first mini retirement when I was 19. I was academically burned out and had been ill with an ongoing autoimmune issue. I was tired and a bit lost. I took 6 months out of life just to be in the sun, just to explore what I could on a very limited budget I'd saved, in Africa. And I found I needed experience and qualifications to do most of what I wanted to do with the time I had made. And so back I went with renewed vigour into my first post-retirement life, knowing what I wanted more so and why I wanted it, knowing why I was there, having made choices and jumped into my chosen change during my mini-retirement. I took my next mini-retirement after my first degree. I worked hard for many months, saving, then off I went on a round the world ticket, focused on adventure and freedom without a care in the world. I set myself free to see where I wanted to go back to, and wound up right back in Dublin, back in the same relationship I'd left as well, right back where I'd started in some ways. But in others, changed forever, as I'd experienced exploration and cultivated new connections. I'd faced challenges and changes and kept moving forward, making it work. I might have come back to the same place and the same partner, but I had grown as a person and was ready to take on the new challenges that awaited me in the rest of my 20s. I took my next mini-retirement in 2 parts in my late 20s. In the middle, I paused to come back to work and to complete my postgraduate degree. This time, mini retirement led to a complete life overhaul as I chose to change hemisphere and continent, spending the next 10 years working in Africa for much of the year, spending thousands of hours on, in, or under the Indian Ocean, diving, snorkeling, and swimming with giants of the ocean, sharks, rays, whales, turtles, and humans, who are more giant in their impact than in their size. I ended up living a dream that I thought I was going to have to work for 2 or more decades in order to bring about. There's more than one way to get to your goals. I took my next mini retirement in the beginning of 2020, which, augmented by the panic-stricken world, saw me living across the UK and Europe, uncovering hidden depths to my own past and unpacking every skeleton-filled closet I had. This one was somewhat unexpected. I had known it was coming, but I had foreseen a few short months and some family time, sand, sun, sea, and new foods and cultures. What I had not foreseen was that the already catalyzed crumbling of my known world would reveal dark, dangerous depths that I had run from my whole life. I hadn't foreseen that I was making time to stop running from my shadow and instead to turn to face it. I came out of this mini retirement making less money annually than ever before, but more per hour than I ever had before. I came out of this mini retirement valuing myself and my time like never before. I took my next mini retirement in 2024, with my newfound value of myself and time leading me to Bali, where I dedicated myself to joyously exploring and living radiantly as me every day. Just letting myself be, to frolic, light and free. After the dense heaviness of previous years, this was time made to cultivate explosive, radiant expansion. And this time fostered and fueled the next steps on my path that I take today, tomorrow, and every day. The interesting thing is that how I spent each of these different retirements, whether backpacking on a shoestring with friends, in the ocean daily, come rain or shine, travelling alone in sub-Saharan Africa, running away from and then turning to face the ghosts of my past, excitedly exploring who I am and could be by dancing between a hectic and endless list of activities. How I spent each of these different mini retirements is not necessarily something I would choose to do now today, or maybe ever again in my life, and I'm not sure I would have wanted to do any of them age 70. So if I hadn't done them when I did, then when? When would I have? And if I had not done them, would I be the version of myself I am today? Likely not. Because at each mini retirement, I learned something about myself. I found something new and gave something up. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because it was time to move onwards into the new best version of me I could be. Time to say goodbye to yesterday's me, who would only grow more and more uncomfortable in the present if I tried to hang on to her. She belonged to the past, like an old pair of jeans that were once a daily favourite, but now, somehow, no longer quite fit right. To let go of yesterday's me, sometimes with bittersweet joy at having ever been her, and sometimes with, frankly, a lot of delight to move on. Those mini retirements helped me to make space to shift into the next version of me and to choose to create the next stage of my life. And at each stage, I was completely in it, completely immersed, completely there. For better or worse, each version of me was my whole world for the time I existed in it. Then, through the mini retirements, I found a way to gain some space, to see clearly, to make choices, to not take things for granted, and to let go and move on if needed. Perhaps this is why we are told to work in a block and retire in a block. Because what company or government or system wants the hassle of someone coming back differently or not coming back at all? Well, a progressive one does. And only a non-progressive one would want to hold people in a state of effective stasis for decades if it were against their true soul path. I'm not saying every mini retirement will result in a big shift. It may result in returning home or to the same role, happy to re-enter a life you left for a while. But still, something will have been gained. not only from the time away, but from the attitude of choice with which you return. It's actually better all round, because rather than being tied to a job or a life with golden handcuffs, mini retirements create space where we can see the choices we are making and either make them afresh, reaffirming our commitment to them, or make different ones. If you want change, change something. If you don't know what to change, cultivate a stop for a moment. Not forever, just for a while, so you can get your bearings and see where you want to restart and where you don't. I know it isn't easy. I'm not speaking from a background of financial wealth. I'm speaking as someone who started working a weekend job when I was 12 years old and saved hard for each of the mini retirements I have taken so far, choosing to go without some things because I was choosing to have or create others. I'm speaking as someone who could easily have cultivated a life where I said, I can't afford to do it, and then didn't do it. But I'm also speaking as someone who took on the challenge and made it work for me, and found that the insight found, connection made, and change I created from each mini retirement, each stopping point, means I would have been actually a lot poorer in all ways had I not afforded myself the opportunity to stop for a while. In pairing with every time we say the words can't, there's a reason why we are making that so, and an answer, way round it, or solution associated with that. At the end of the day, it's a choice. Which choice we make is up to each of us. But make it while seeing fully. Don't make it blind. If you choose something, own it, because it is in doing that that you take on what your choice is and can see the other options available to you now and in future. And try to see the difference between what is real and what is a personal pattern or an agreed myth. Something done on repeat because it is the normal way. What is normal anyway? It is what most people do. That doesn't make it necessarily the wisest thing to do, the best thing to do, or the right thing to do for each individual person. I personally don't intend to ever retire in the traditionally understood way at all. And that doesn't sound like a life sentence to me. I've created a life I do not want to escape from, and I will continue to create a life I want to be in every day, with lots of mini retirements along the way to make sure I am doing the things I want to do when I want to do them, that I am wanting the things I am doing when I am doing them, and to make sure that I am moving with the evolution of myself, which is the journey of a lifetime. That I'm not waiting to try to pack all the things I wanted when I was 25, 30, 35, 45, 55 years old, all into my 75-year-old self, whether I want them as a 75-year-old or not. And I'm not waiting only to find myself missing out on them entirely because my 75-year-old self no longer wants to do them. They say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, the concept of a singular linear retirement is broken. And if you want, you can fix it, starting right here and now with the choices you make today. So why not think about it? List some things that you want to do now that you don't think you will want to do when you are 70, and get cracking on them. List some things you wanted to do in the past that you no longer want to do now. Notice whether you did them or not. And if you didn't do them, but it's no longer you that you see yourself doing them, let them go with the promise that you will not let others pass you by. For me, that's a big hello to those drunken nights in high heels, waiting in queues for new nightclubs, bunk bed dorm rooms shared with friends old and new, and 16-hour packed local bus journeys surrounded by so many people that there was no space for an aisle, and including several chickens across what remote and wild places. Because I loved almost every second of all of them in the past. But if I hadn't done them then I wouldn't be doing them now necessarily, because I no longer want to. What if we are not traveling through time, but time is traveling through us? And if you don't act on it as it passes through you, then it will be gone for this time around anyway. would you then pay more attention to what is right here and now? I know I do, since looking at it like that. We have all heard the phrase, "What's for you won't pass you by." But what if it's not going to be for you for all of life? What if it is for you at one time, but not others? And it's there for you to reach out and dance with for a part of life, not the whole of life. So what about the risks associated with stepping out of the linear timeline, away from the hamster wheel, of stopping the normal world and getting off for a while? The dangers of losing out or wasting time during mini-retirement? I'm not worried about not being where I would have been if I hadn't taken time out, because the time out actually means I go further down the path that is right for me in each of the different stages of my life. The saying goes, the longer you stay on a train heading in the wrong direction, the more expensive the journey back will be. By taking time out, I stoked the fire of who I am and fueled myself to make choices and changes sooner in life, before I have travelled too far down a track that may be used to be perfect, but is not perfect anymore. Not for me, anyway. For me, it's a win all round. Experiences that otherwise might have passed me by retirement age. Space to see, think, and reorientate myself to who I am and what my soul desires in my current and next life stages. Returning to work with a renewed vigour, purpose, and drive. Making space to evolve into a better version of myself and cultivate connections. And a life lived to the fullest every decade, every year, every month, every week, every day. Not largely ticked away, half waiting for a promised land which may never come, may not last long, and will definitely hold a different version of me from the person I am today. Rethinking a linear life path and taking repeated mini-retirements forms part of a path to live and tell my life story in a way that is more true to me every day.
We are all telling our stories. And we are all telling ourselves stories about it all. Are you brave enough to walk with me into hearing, considering, and understanding the stories we tell? Join me next time, where we'll be considering more stories and illusions and stepping into creating the freedom we desire. Every moment, we are who we are choosing to be. You choose. Choose you, because your story matters.